Well, good morning, everyone. This is Todd Holberecht with Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm here to share a message with you and hopefully brighten your day. But let's begin with this. I want to light the chalice and get started with this reading of the chalice. We kindle this chalice flame because there is darkness in our world. The shadows of injustice, oppression, hunger, and pain fill too many lives with gloom. Not because it will vanquish all of the darkness, but because it is a start. Because rather than condemn the dark, we have chosen to bring light. And let's take a moment to breathe. I don't have a bell or I would ring it. And as we do this, I want to do a calming meditation. I know there's a lot of anxiety that people are feeling, and I want to do a little bit of a calming meditation. So you can either say this out loud if you want, respond out loud if you're by yourself, or you can just say it inside. I'm going to say it inside so that I don't interrupt what you're hearing. So what I'd like you to do is name 5 things that you see. Breathe. Now, name 4 things that you can hear. And breathe. Now, name 3 things that you can feel, like touch. And breathe. Now name 2 things that you can smell. And breathe. And 1 thing that you can taste. And take 1 more deep breath. Well, I welcome you this morning into this place of, I don't want to say sacred space, but a sacred space that you have created where you are. And so we're all in our individual sacred space because we are on lockdown. And so we have to create space where we're at. And one of the ways that we recognize HUF stands for fellowship. And so as a fellowship, we want to continue to stay connected with one another. And Anthony last week shared a message with us to encourage us. And he asked me this week if I would be willing to do it, because he has a bunch of stuff on his plate, taking care of the people of the fellowship and other things that he's facing this week. And so he felt too busy to really get at some inspirational words. And so he asked if I would be willing to step in. I'd suggested that I would be available if he needed that. So I know that this is a time, it's a season, I want to say not a challenging time, but rather a season of challenge. We are moving through something that's challenging, but it will change, and we know that. But during this time, there can be a whole lot of anxiety and fear. And not just about our own health. Will I catch the coronavirus? Will I get sick? Will I die? There is all of that we face, but there's around us. See, look, I'm touching my face, but I wash my hands, so I'm being good. So, and I'm the only one here, so I know I'm safe. But will our friends get sick? We're worried about that. And what's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen with food? What's going to happen with our home or money or work? What's going to happen with all of those things? How are we going to recover from this? Which actually brings us to existential questions like, do we want to recover from this? Should we recover? Do we want to return to who we were? Or can this be a shift in the timeline of humanity and of our country? And can we go in another direction? In the book The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, there is a scene in the Fellowship of the Rings where Frodo is talking to Gandalf, and Frodo says, I wish none of this had happened. And Gandalf replies saying, so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given you. And so as we have this time alone and we have time to think, we have to be asking ourselves, what are we going to do with the time that is given to us? What's going to happen in our future? What's going to happen even now in this moment? And the first thing that came to me was, because we are Unitarian Universalists, was the issues of love and justice, that we have to think on those things, that this isn't just about taking care of myself. And actually, this isolation that has been put upon our nation and definitely upon our state and city is really an act of this love and justice. It's not that I'm sick or that sickness might kill me, but if I become a carrier of this sickness, I could hurt someone else. And so in love and justice, I am choosing to isolate myself and protect others. And when I do interact, I interact with wise ways, wearing gloves if I need to, washing my hands, doing those things, staying 6 feet of distance. And so as I've been thinking about this and this time of uncertainty, I found myself prayerfully asking, what do I need to face this battle? What do I need to be more than an overcomer with all of this? And recently I found myself running into things that have the word faith in them. And I was thinking about faith and love and justice. And it drew me to a passage that we find in the Bible. And this is one that you hear a lot in weddings, quoted in weddings. It's 1 Corinthians 13. And the Apostle Paul penned words about love. You might have heard some of these, that love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud. And it goes on in the very end of that, this poem that he wrote, that he says, all I know now is partial and incomplete. Now we see things imperfectly, as in a poor mirror, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. I will know everything completely in that time, just as I am known. There are 3 things that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And that statement came up in my mind as I was thinking about what do I need to do and what do I need to be thinking. And what struck me was, over the years, a lot of you know I was a pastor for 25 years. And during that time, I heard so many messages on love and gave them. And I heard so many messages on faith and gave them. But I only heard one message in all of those years on hope. And so I found myself thinking about, what is hope? And I see that it's something that existentialists and philosophers have looked at throughout history. Kant and Nietzsche and so many others have different views on the good and the bad of hope. A lot of it comes out of, some of their foundation comes out of the story of Pandora and some of the original creation stories and myths. And Pandora, if you know the story of Pandora at all, there were the Titans, and Prometheus took fire from Zeus and he gave it to man, and that made Zeus angry, and so Prometheus was chained up. And as a punishment, Prometheus created the first woman and put her on the earth, and her name was Pandora. And all of the gods came and gave her a different blessing. You can see it's totally a patriarchal system, that a woman being given was seen as a negative. Unfortunately, a lot of those origin stories, it's seen that way because they have their views were that way, were very patriarchal. But she was blessed by all the other gods, and then he gave her a jar that, or sometimes we call it Pandora's box, that changed to a box in the 16th century. But it was a jar in the original Greek, and she was told not to open the jar. And she opens the jar, and if you know the story, all the evils in the world flew out of that jar. But the interesting thing, and I hadn't known this historically, or in the past, I didn't know this, but in the jar, after all the evils flew out, there was one thing left in the jar, and that thing was hope. And there was a lot of argument by philosophers. Nietzsche said that hope is evil. It was part of the evils that were in the jar, and so it was a statement that hope is also evil. And he saw hope as this really evil thing that keeps men from moving forward, men and women from moving forward. It's interesting because it parallels to me the origin story in the Bible, where Adam and Eve and they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then all sin came into the world, and death and all that stuff. And God was speaking to them and said, this is what's going to be wrong because you did this, and this is what's going to be wrong. In the midst of it, he was talking to the serpent who tempted and got Eve to eat the fruit. And he made a comment about that the seed of the woman, a child, will bruise the serpent's head. And it was a picture of the Messiah coming in the future. And so there was this hope of a day in the future when everything would be reconciled. And so hope, has this thing that was there that was set at the very beginning of these origin stories, that though things are bad, there's a better tomorrow. And so I started thinking about this thing of hope, and what really struck me about it was that most of the time when we think of hope, we think of something tangible. We think of something like, I hope that I'll win $1 million. I hope that my child will be able to come up with her grandkids this summer and visit me. I hope that I don't get sick. I hope that if I do get sick, they have a cure by then, so I'll get well. So the hope is in a thing of the earth and a thing that is tangible. And Kierkegaard made a comment. He said, for hope to really have effect, it can't be something of the earth. It can't be something that is tangible, because earthly hope will always fail, will always be up and down and never be a roller coaster. The hope that you have to have is in something that is eternal and is beyond this earthly realm. It reminded me of the step in the 12-step in AA and other organizations that use the 12-step, that at one point when you pray, you have to pray to a higher power, whatever that higher power is. For some, that higher power is God. For some, that higher power is the universe. And the idea is you're looking for something that's bigger than you, something that you cannot control, you cannot influence, you cannot mess up, but it is big enough that it can control and influence you. And the hope that I found I needed to grab onto inside of myself is what I have, which I know that which is bigger. For myself, I name it God. Others may name it, like I said, any other things. But for me, I know that there is a goodness there, and love and justice resides there. And so my hope isn't that the coronavirus will pass. My hope is not that Donald Trump will do the right thing or not do the right thing. My hope is not that Joe Biden will become our president, or Bernie Sanders will become our president, or that Donald Trump won't be our president. I can't put my hope in that, because those are tangible things that will fail me or not fail me. Rather, my hope is that as bad as things could be between here and here, on the other side is goodness. On the other side, there's going to be good that is going to happen. And I may be one of those that's going to suffer and maybe even die in that interim. People who I love may suffer and die in that interim. But I can look beyond to a better future that is beyond my control, beyond who I am. It's in the hands of eternity. And so as I face the anxiety of what's going to happen to the finances in America, what's going to happen to America, we could crash. We could go back into a depression that like happened in the 1930s. We could be selling apples on street corners and trying to just get food on our table. We could. But I'm not afraid, because I have hope in something bigger than the economy, bigger than my need for food, bigger than my need for life. That there is something bigger than all of that. And I hope there. And I have faith that it's true. And I love you. And I am loved. And faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. But I hope today, that word could be misused after what I just said. My desire today is that you will have a hope inside of you, and that through this time in this sacred space, you will have hope to find something bigger than life and not be afraid, because there is hope in that which is bigger than all of us. So thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. As we extinguish this chalice, my hope is that the light from here goes out into all of our hearts, and we carry it as a sacred space day by day inside of us. So, blessings, peace, shalom, salam alaikum. Blessed be.